That was issued as a
Outside of that such a book is available to a new generation, or several new generations since it was first published. So that's the reason we're here today. Now, I'm going to ask Councillor Christy Burke, who knew Eamonn well, kind of to officially launch the book and to give some thoughts on Eamonn and on the history of Dublin.
It's a great pleasure and honour to know Eamonn Mac Thomáis. He was my OC in jail in 1973, and I found him a very committed, dedicated, compassionate and humble individual. I think one of the great things that I copped onto and hung on to with him was that he was a true Dub. He was a genuine true Dub, and he always had the well-being of Republican prisoners, for which he was in charge of in D-Wing in Mountjoy. He was also forever planning escapes. He was forever planning escapes. I remember one night he was on D1, and I went into the cell to him because you're always guaranteed to get a drink off him. And I was sitting down, and he said, "Don't sit too close to that wall." They had removed the bricks and installed wallpaper and then engraved it with sort of brickwork. He then, the night that they were going to escape, there was what they call a tourniquet brick, and when they tried to kick it, it wouldn't move. And then the most memories that I have of that was the morning we were shifted to Portlaoise. He had planned an escape for that night to go out through the roof of the Joy, and we were all shifted. But he was successful with the helicopter, and that's a lot to be said. But he was a great bloke. I used to have to laugh when I'd see the chief screw that time was Ralph Lee. He was 6'3", and Eamonn was small, and you'd see Eamonn standing up to Ralph Lee, and it was so comical, you know, and he was so dedicated and so determined. And I remember there was 19 Dubs arrested for taking over the GPO, and they were sent into us in D1. And I remember him saying to me, "Jez, you think we troubles? We certainly have enough of them now." You know, so there's always a lot of wit to him. And I sat with him at nights in the cell when he was putting, I think it was, me Jewel and Darrell in Dublin, and he used to be asking me sayings that were said in the docks and all that. So he really was a pleasure to know, and I think it's appropriate that we're only an arm's distance from Kilmainham jail, and it's Easter week. But I wonder how he'd feel about the name McDowell here tonight, given the fact that the hassle and the flack that we've received from the Justice Minister. But I understand Eamonn launched, or certainly was here some time ago, his last official engagement with Jerry Adams, and that's the reason why. Could I acknowledge the presence of Mrs. Mac Thomáis here tonight, and indeed Shane Mac Thomáis. Could I also acknowledge the presence of Councillor Andrew O'Connell, Councillor Killian Ford, and Deputy Angus O'Snoddy. I hope I didn't leave anybody out, and of course everybody else is welcome. But it's a real privilege and honour to relaunch the book, and I hereby relaunch the book of Eamonn Mac Thomáis, Down Dublin Streets. Could Mr. Mac Thomáis come up for a presentation of Eamonn's book? Do you want to say a few words? Sure. Not like Eamonn. Okay,
Okay, thanks everybody, and I'll hand you back to Angus. Good luck.
The new generation kind of has access to the stories of the past, the histories of the past, as told by people who took part in it, or people who enjoyed history, as Eamonn did. So, Gurramila Mágav, there'll be a few sandwiches and that going around, and or loads of sandwiches by the looks of it, so enjoy yourselves for the rest of the night. Good luck.
That's why it seems big.
Just a little on too long because there's not that much known about it. The film was made between 1934 and 1936 by a garage owner called Tom Cooper, and it's quite amazing actually because he got the whole village involved in this, and up to 250 people helped out in making the film. It's a complete homemade film. Many of the people who starred in the film actually took part in the War of Independence as well, so you have authentic characters in it. Everything apparently was made from scratch, like from microphones to dollies and all that sort of thing. They made it all on the ground themselves, and even going to the local chemist, that's where they processed all the film. The film lasts an hour and 10 minutes. Like I said, it was made in 1936 for the 20th anniversary of 1916. Lots of people have talked about whether Tom Cooper was pro-treaty or anti-treaty. I'll let you watch the film yourself to make judge of that, but you'll notice time and time again in it, they talk about fighting for the Republic, not just getting rid of England, but actually a Republic, you know, so that to me kind of leans towards an anti-state stance. So I'm going to start the film now in a second. The start of the film is a silent bit. It's about 2 minutes of silence, and then sound does kick in, and that's another point. It was the first talkie made in Ireland as well, so I'll start it off now.
That's not so bad. Come on, let's go. Here, I can't waste any more time with you. Haven't you seen those weapons? You know where they sleep? Who gives them food? Down on? Answer quick, or I'll fill you with lead. I'm getting tired of this. Take them away. Lock them up. Come on, get going. Hello? Trying to escape? Hello? Who are you?
Oh, that's a big fella. Why don't you come on and see for yourself?
Cut out that comedy stuff. Said, who are you?
Comedy, did you say? No, this is the first act of a tragedy we're preparing for you.
You be damned. Blinking rebels, stop the wire. Come on, Rhoda. We won't wait any longer. We'll show 'em.
Right there, we're getting another lot. What does Jimmy say?
Jimmy says nothing.
Right off, 7 through. Everything all right? Just in time. I let Johnny do the whole job with that. Okay, the fight is done. Get down with that fireworks for a minute. In there, car.
It is, Ruby.
Go in. Get ready, lads. We'll let him have it this time. You're all not going to be alive. You could have got every one of you if you wanted to. Get out of here.
On Saturday we're going to Arbor Hill at 11 o'clock, and then Sunday's the main parade. So thanks again for coming. and we'll see you all.
Hey Shane, get the widescreen next time.
Yeah, next year we're showing the Dawn too. It's the Empire Strikes Back. See, you join the IRA and you get the girl.
For the little tour we're going to do, obviously it's going to be 1916. I'm Lorcan Collins. This is my friend and comrade and co-tour guide Sinn Mac Thomáis. We're going to do it like I'll do one spot and Shane will do the next one, okay? We also sort of encourage you to ask questions whenever you want, you know, because we can just go on and on and on about 1916, but if you have a specific comment you want to make, or if you want to challenge us over something we say, you know, bring it on, like we're ready for you, okay? I'll just...
to take was this one here. Now this is Pearse Street Garda Station today. Those did come down here to take over this building, and the reason they wanted to get in there was this was the headquarters of G Division, right? And G Division were like the police intelligence of its day. Now I know that's an oxymoron, but there you go. You know, but did you see the Michael Collins film?
Yeah.
Right, some of you saw it. You remember where Collins gets in the middle of the night and goes through all the files?
Yeah.
Okay, this is where that happened. Right, not Dublin Castle, that film, but this is where it happened, right? So the lads wanted to get in and basically burn all these files, but they couldn't get in there because on this side here, this is all the Trinity College dormitories, and all the students that were in the officer training corps came out the window and shot down on them there. So this side here, they were also joined by
You're stuck in a dangerous situation, they just stop you and give out to you. We've a gem here in that, from a tourism aspect, you know, you've got the birthplace of Pádraig Pearse, yet there's no signs anywhere saying, come on tourists, come down and pay your respects to Pádraig Pearse. Like if this was America, you know, this would be George Washington's birthplace, and there would be plenty to show you. Was like there'd be a McDowell's and a Starbucks next door, right? But it's interesting that for years it was a rundown old building, it was a carpet showroom. Some of you would remember, you'd remember Deco Allied Carpets, right? And it was bought over by the Ireland Institute there a few years back, and they did it up in memory of Pádraig Pearse, okay? I will say one or two things about Pearse. He really quantifies the precise good Irishman, you know. Love God, love Ireland, love your mother, in that sort of order, you know. If Pearse wanted everybody in Ireland to speak Gaeilge, to speak the Irish language. On the other hand, James Connolly wanted everybody to have a bit of food in their bellies, especially the children, like, you know. Now, thankfully, it's Connolly's ideals that came through most of all, but most Republicans would find themselves talking about the ideals of Pearse and Connolly. Now, what really thrust Pearse in rules, they have left us our Fenian dead, and as long as Ireland holds these graves, Ireland unfree shall never be at peace, you know. And that used to be all around the place, of course, in the murals. You get what I'm trying to say?
Over there, you see that building there? That's Liberty Hall, right? Tallest building in the south. I think it's the second tallest in the world, I'm not sure. How do you reckon? Any Americans here? Right, okay. So, but on that site in 1916 was a building called Liberty Hall as well. And this is where the forces for 1916 met. We're going over there now in a second. And they met over there and they spread out to the battalions across the city. But the next thing that happened on the River Liffey was on the Wednesday of Easter week, the British sent a ship, called the Helga, a gunship, up here. That bridge wasn't there then. Went about middle way into the water there and aimed its sights at Liberty Hall. Now the first round off board the ship hit that metal bridge. You see that one there with the Heineken sign on it? That's the Dublin Loop Line Railway Bridge. Ireland had an industrial revolution in the 1890s. It lasted about a week, and in the week we built that bridge there. But during the rebellion, the first round hit this bridge, and there was a resounding twang across the city from this. Now, believe it or not, in the GPO, when the men heard the shelling and heard this big twang, Pearse turned to Connolly and he said, "We've already outdone anyone who has come before." Right, now what he was talking about was what Lorcan said earlier, Robert Emmet's 2-hour rebellion, and here they were having a rebellion in Dublin and they were lasting long enough for them to use artillery. It's a bit optimistic, isn't it? You know, this is great, they're using artillery on us. But they did see it as a minor victory that they were still in place, and it was, you know, considering their numbers and who they were facing as well. But on board the ship, they just moved the trajectory of the cannon on board, and the next round lobbed over and hit Liberty Hall square on. but there was nobody in Liberty Hall. They had evacuated the building. There was only one guy in there, a guy called William Ennis. He was an old caretaker, he's about 70. And when the round hit, he said, I'm getting out of here. And he came out of the side door and he ran up the quays. They say he did 100 metres in about 4 seconds. He was one of our Olympic runners. But when they saw him running up, they said, they're in there all right. And they continued to pound Liberty Hall until they completely destroyed it. Having finished with Liberty Hall, the next thing the ship did was turn around and sail back down. You see that ship there? I asked them to put that there this morning as a prop. He had one good idea, right? So he told two guys to get an Irish flag and stick it up on an empty building, one that they weren't in. So the tricolour goes up on the empty building. On board the Helga, they say, that's where they are over there, and they start shelling at the flag. Now the next thing that happened was wonderful, because the shells went over the flag and landed on Beggar's Bush, a British Army barracks over there, right? And when the shells started landing in Beggar's Bush, they said, oh Jesus, get the mortars out, and they started shooting back, right, at the ship. And this friendly fire competition went on for about an hour, while all the guys in Poland were eating biscuits going. Kind of rebellion, you know. But eventually, some intellectual in the British Army, not many, said, you know, where did these guys get a ship from, you know? So, kind of dawned on them, something was wrong here. So then on the Thursday of Easter week, the Helga sailed back up the River Liffey. It almost went under the bridge there and started to shell under the bridge at O'Connell Street. Lots of people think it went over, but it went under the bridge at O'Connell Street. 90% of the shells were incendiary devices. Canisters packed with magnesium ribbon that when it landed it set fire to things. And it was
absolutely, definitely born in Edinburgh, 107 Cowgate, okay? But other people gave money. You got the Communist Party of Ireland, all 10 members gave £1 in each, right? The Irish Life Assurance PLC, the bastion of Irish capitalism. Sinn Féin gave money, I don't know who they're. A lot of American unions as well, because is there anyone from the States? I'll just explain. There was a lot of association between James Connolly when he lived over there. He's one of the first Wobblies, you know, the workers of the world. And his running mate, Jim Larkin, also spent a lot of time in America. More time than he expected, because he got locked up for 6 years in Sing Sing prison in upstate New York for his union activities. And sometimes people say things like, I don't like Jim Larkin, you know, he didn't fight in the rise and he's a coward. He was in America at the time, you know, like, and then they say, I still don't like him, you know, but this is his famous phrase, James Connolly, the quote, is the cause of Labour is the cause of Ireland, and the cause of Ireland is the cause of Labour. They cannot be dissevered, they cannot be separated. And I'm sure you know the flag, it's one of the nicer flags from the time. The starry plough, the plough is really for Labour and the stars are for socialism, you know, with sticks, with blades, you know. Some guys come out with shotguns, which is all very handy for shooting crows, but if you've got a fella up there with a you know, a sharpshooter, your shotgun isn't going to be, but people are slagging them, you know, the Dubliners are going, Connolly, where's your pop guns, all that kind of slagging, you know. Right behind James Connolly is our friend Joseph Plunkett. Yeah, Plunkett was dying from glandular tuberculosis and was assisted along the way by his aide-de-camp, a young man, 22 years of age, Michael Collins. You know, later, of course, he would become quite well known in Irish history during the War of Independence. Has anyone got a camera? Rubbish tourists. I'm only joking. You know where to be known. You can get your...
And the order was given left turn GPO charge, and the men charged across here into the General Post Office. Now, why did they take the General Post Office? Well, it's a nice big solid building in the centre of town, but also this is where telegrams were sent from. And they said, we'll stop telegrams going out from Dublin War in the War Office that Dublin is being held by rebels. Now, the mistake they made was they didn't take the Exchange House, which was over in the Temple Bar, and somebody over there topped off a telegram saying, Dublin, rebels, quick, come, right? And the British War Office response was to send troops from Belfast, Manchester, Liverpool and the Curragh camp, which is in Kildare in the county beside Dublin. And at the end of the 5 days of the rebellion, there was 17,000 British soldiers in the streets of Dublin, right? And the rebels had about 1,700, right? So it was 10 to 1 kind of stuff. Now, my favourite of all of those are the Liverpool troops, right? There's all these scousers over in Liverpool in depots waiting to go off and fight in World War I, and they're all put on troop ships in the Liverpool docks, and they were dropped off in Dunleary on the south side of the city. And when they got off, they all thought they were in France, and they were going up to girls going, "Bonjour, mademoiselle," you know, "Où est la front line," you know, that kind of thing. And then somebody said, "Oh, look, there's a big sign saying Dublin," right? So look at Lancers, right? British soldiers on horses. They didn't have lances; they had rifles. Gathered up at the Parnell Monument up there, and decided to investigate what was going on down here in the GPO. Now they started trotting down, and the order was given in here not to shoot until they were directly in front of the GPO. But that's the kind of order that you can give well-disciplined troops. Like, it looks good in Zulu and stuff like that, whites of their eyes and that kind of nonsense. But in reality, men get jumpy and nervous. And one of the men shot prematurely at the Lancers. When they reached about where the spire is now today, they killed 2 of them and wounded 3. And the Lancers turned around and rode back up O'Connell Street and back to their depot in the Phoenix Park. And when they got there, they said, "Oh, there's about 5,000 guys down in the GPO." You know. Eventually down here, the Brits came along and they put a cordon down there and another one up here, and they were boxed in, right? They didn't know where to go. This was all on fire and they were held in on both sides. And eventually Pearse asked Elizabeth O'Farrell, right? 2 women came with them down here. Elizabeth O'Farrell, a 17-year-old trainee nurse, was with them, a member of Coming Them On. And he asked her to go out to the top of the street with a white flag and tell the British he was ready to talk peace terms. And she came out here and walked up the street. It's probably the bravest thing, I think, in 1916 with what Elizabeth O'Farrell did, because men had just been shot with a white flag. So it was incredibly brave. She went up to the British and said, "Pearse is ready to talk peace terms." The British took her off the Tom Clark shop over there, and eventually she came back down here and got Pearse, and her and Pearse marched to the top of the street, and Pearse handed over his sword and surrendered to General Lowe. But then they took Elizabeth O'Farrell with the surrender note from Pearse and Connolly to go all around all Dublin, out to all the other garrisons with it. And she did the same thing again, white flag in one hand, note in the other, and went into these highly volatile situations, you know. And this is an amazing thing. Like, here's a woman. She was in the GPO in 1916. She was down here at Pearse Street tending Connolly. She stood beside Pearse as he surrendered, and then she brought the surrender note all around the country, or sorry, all around the city. And you get a book on 1916. And she's barely mentioned. Why not? Because she's a woman. Yeah. Because she's a woman.
I hate them too. They drive me mad. Oh, you know, no.
Where were you when you were shot?
Selling vegetables.
You try.
First ship forms for you all to fill out. Right. Okay, so when Pearse surrendered down there, down at the end, down at the laneway down there, is where Pearse surrendered. The note went out from Elizabeth O'Farrell around all the garrisons. They were marched to different places, but the ones on the north side were marched over here, and they were held in the Rotunda Gardens, which are behind this red brick building here, and they were held there overnight. The next morning the police and army came out and marched amongst them, and all the ringleaders, people they had foils on in Pearse Street and stuff like that, they were taken over to Arbour Hill. Lots of people think they were taken straight to Kilmainham, but they were taken to Arbour Hill, and then they were given military court and sentenced to death. And once they were sentenced to death, they were brought over to Kilmainham jail, and you all know of the leaders that were executed. So that all happened, you know, in the Rotunda Gardens there. The Rotunda is an amazingly interesting place. Sinn Féin was founded over there in 1905 by Arthur Griffith, and the Volunteers were founded there as well. So it's one of the most historic squares. Other than that, from me, thanks everybody for coming on the tour. It was good fun going around with you, and see you all again next year. Okay? All right, all good. Yeah, good man. Great stuff. Yeah,